My father is the smartest man I know, Hakim Lincoln. And I've met a lot of smart folks over the years. MIT had them in abundance. And in my work career, I've known plenty of people who, because they are so smart, take themselves very seriously. So seriously. Pops, however, was never self-important. Often the smartest person in the room, he never flaunted his academic side. He was as comfortable conversing with auto mechanics and plumbers or the dollar store cashier as he was with university provosts. He's the most universal guy I know. I watched him being adaptable. Whenever we found ourselves in a challenging situation, he handled it steadily. If there was a repair needed around the house but he didn't have the right tool or replacement part, he'd MacGyver it. While he worked, he would mumble to himself, "You gotta adapt to stay adept." People usually assumed incorrect things about him. He taught at a community college. They assumed he had few options. They didn't know he had an Ivy League PhD. He had converted to Islam in his college years in the 70s. They assumed he was a radical who hated America. But he taught me the Star-Spangled Banner when I was 5, and always took off his hat and stood for the national anthem at Detroit Tigers home games. Sure, he flirted with the Panthers like many African-American college students of his time, but he couldn't get with all the abuse. "Not the police, the drugs and sex," he said. He met my mom in college. He said he was attracted to her modesty. She was the most beautiful woman in the room, but didn't flaunt it. She was Muslim, a Chicagoan, from a family of prominent African-American civil rights lawyers who worked on Muhammad Ali's legal team. She was committed to public service, even when she went on to the private sector. She worked in the Employee Health, Safety, and Welfare Department of a major automobile company. They both were committed to the civil rights struggle. They never left the struggle. They didn't move out to the suburbs. "Our people don't need us in the suburbs," they said. So my dad didn't pursue the opportunities that opened up to him around the country after his doctorate. He was trained as an economic historian, but he turned down an offer to move to Ann Arbor and become a Wolverine. Instead, he stayed right there in Detroit and taught basic business and remedial math courses for folks who couldn't afford a 4-year college or who couldn't get accepted to one right away. My dad is the only PhD I know who spent time in prison. No, not as a convict, as a volunteer tutor. He told us many stories of guys he taught to read, but also of guys who had math whiz brains but used it for the drug game. I think because he had seen the intimate nuances of so many sides of life, he could see through superficialities when most people concentrated on the surface. And this is why I say he's the smartest man I know. The first time I realized that was when he saw through a lie I told in middle school. My brother Jabril beat up a kid who was making fun of me at the neighborhood playground. The kids were calling me Poindexter because my parents made me take cello lessons. Arnold Poindexter was a violin-playing character from Revenge of the Nerds, and I guess a violin was like a cello. Jamila did piano. Jabril played drums. My instrument was volunteered upon me after my mom saw Yo-Yo Ma perform on PBS. She said she dreamed of me playing in concert. "Ma is a common Muslim surname in China," she told me. "Maybe Yo-Yo is really Yahya," she speculated, thinking of the Arabic name. Yahya. Anyway, Jabril was always getting in fights, and one day one of my verbal assaulters must have struck a nerve for Jabril. I mean, I didn't mind. I tuned that stuff out. But Jabril couldn't. All I heard Jabril say was, "Call him Poindexter one more time and see what happens." Before the boy uttered Dex, he was on the floor. Jabril did it in one strike, but his punch landed awkwardly, dislocating his thumb. We had a rule in our family. Don't fist fight over words. A strong man restrains his anger, Pops always told us. We got home and Jabril was in terrible pain. A monkey bar accident, we professed. My mom, the first aid responder of the family, diagnosed the patient and we rushed to the emergency room. While we waited, my father interrogated me. He asked me to walk through what happened. So how exactly did Jabril slip? What was the height of the bar? What angle was his hand when he landed? He grabbed a piece of blank notepaper and sketched out the key components of the playground with me right there. It showed the monkey bars, the height at scale, the black padding over pavement, and a stick figure for Jabril. He even asked me how much breeze there was so he could factor in a possible wind factor. He made some calculations on the sheet diligently, it seemed. Of course, today I realize he wasn't evaluating my answers. He was evaluating me. He was humoring me in my falsification and teaching me a lesson. Because as I dug deeper and deeper into my own tale, I realized I had spun a story that could not stand up to scrutiny. My dad didn't have to say, "I know you're lying." There was no gotcha moment. Because as I looked at his drawing, I saw how absurd I was being. I fessed up and told him exactly what happened. My father was true to the meaning of his name, Hakim, wise. My mom also got to the bottom of things quickly. When she and Jabril came out of the examination room with his thumb splinted up, she already knew the truth. She had witnessed many a factory assembly line accident and also had seen her fair share of workers' fistfights. She easily discerned the result of an innocent accident from the aftermath of human violence. She didn't need to probe. She just told Jabril, in her self-assured voice of someone who once kept you in her womb, "Baby, please, tell me what really happened." Those were words her children could never resist. Jabril and I both were punished. He had to go to the house of the boy he socked and do his chores for the next 3 weekends. But for me, it was no TV for 3 weeks. My dad said I needed a break from the world of make-believe. So while the family was watching our favorite TV shows, I had to consume non-fiction reading material. Week 1, I had to read from Ibn Khaldun's Al-Muqaddimah and report my learnings back to the family. The second week, it was Adam Smith's Theory of Moral Sentiments. Week 3, he had me review 10 entries in our Encyclopedia Britannica. My dad lovingly called it my special education program. It was learning by reprimand, he said. Yeah, the smartest guy I know. Signing off, Jabbari Lincoln, special ed student.